Talking Cougars is brought to you by Safeway. Come see what's fresh.
Welcome to Talking Cougars, episode 4. I'm Michael Bumpus with my quarterback, Alex Brink. Ooh, this is a tough one. 59-10, the Cougs take the L at North Texas to a former coach and Coach Morris. And there's no MVPs this week. You know, it doesn't feel right if we were to give MVPs. So we're going to talk about exactly what happened, the miscues of this game. We're going to start with offense. First off, B, how you doing? How'd you take this loss? And then tell me what you saw on offense.
Well, first and foremost, Bump, we are ball coaches, so we're going to talk like it's ball, right? Like you said, no participation trophies, no ribbons here. We got to talk about what it is, how it happened, and be honest. We're a little bit like Jimmy Rogers in that sense, you know what I mean, man? Just tell it like it is. So how was it for me? It was tough. Now, fortunately, I was in the booth and I wasn't strapped up and playing. I've experienced a little something like that, so have you. But in the end, you've been there. When you're a broadcaster having to call a blowout, it's a tough one, man. It's a tough one. I tried my best. Hope everybody listening appreciated it. But it's hard to sugarcoat that one, man. Like, you know, a lot of it for me when I looked at that game was around the offensive side of the football. I think the defense, you know, they gave up the touchdown right away, that first possession. I thought they kind of held their own a little bit the next few series and then got put in some really tough positions. And you know, in the end, Bump, it came down to turnovers. You can't turn the ball over on the road, and you certainly can't turn it over 5 times, right? Offensively and in special teams. I think for Washington State, they knew coming into this season to be successful, they were going to have to be efficient offensively and let a good defense fly around and make plays, and they just couldn't put that together. And I think North Texas is a good football team, right? They're fast, they're well coached, they've made some significant changes on defense. But Washington State made it easy on them. A bunch of short field touchdowns. And when you're a defense and you got to defend with your backs against the wall in the short field, it's really tough. A couple things I want to highlight. Okay, Washington State with 8 minutes left in the second quarter. They were only down 14-3, Bump. They had thrown 2 interceptions. Jackson Potter had thrown 2 interceptions. They'd given up the 2 touchdowns. They'd driven down inside the North Texas 10-yard line and couldn't punch it in, had to kick a field goal. And then one of the other interceptions happened on the North Texas side of the 50. I really felt at that moment Washington State had a chance to stay in that ball game if they could have put a drive together, got some points, gotten into half. Instead, Kirby Voorhees put the ball on the turf, and that's really where things started to go sideways, honestly, is that ball went on the turf, North Texas scored, 3 and out the next drive with a punt block or a drop snap that ended up to being a punt block, then a short field touchdown, and then the Julian Duggar fumble led to another touchdown. And then by that point, Bump, it was off the rails.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough to watch because you felt like you mentioned, you were in the game for a little bit. You didn't feel like this wasn't a game that you could have. And I'm going to focus on the defense. You pointed out what happened on offense. I had to write this one down. They scored on 6 of 8 drives in the first half. We're talking about North Texas. Scored on 3 or 4 drives in the second half. And they had drives in the first half of 12 yards. 19 yards, 12 yards, and 20 yards, all resulting in scores. Like you said, it's tough on the defense. One of my keys to the game that I do for Seattle Sports, I do the Bumpus Palouse preview. And what I said was, you got to make Mastermaker turn the ball over. Guess what? He didn't do that, B. 24 of 29, 211 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He has yet to turn the football over. That was going to be key. But when you're in positions like that as a defense, what can you do? You throw your hands up and say, all right, we'll try again. Hopefully the offense can move the football down the field and at least give us a deeper and longer field to defend. That just didn't happen, man. It was a disaster. I felt the pain for Jimmy Rogers. I was thinking about you in the booth, man. I've called blowouts before, and it's like you go into story time. It's like, all right, the game don't even matter no more. We're just talking about stories and what is to come. But it's about the bounce back now. How is this team going to bounce back? You and I have been a part of some games where we had to suck it up, get back to work on a Sunday, Monday, and show some resilience.
Yeah, we have, Bump. You remember we went down to Oregon. They're, I think, a top 10, top 15 team. It was not a good day for us, me in particular. We lost 53-7. I threw 2 bad first half interceptions, fumbled the ball. That's my hometown, Eugene, Oregon. That was really, really difficult. But guess what? We bounced back. If you remember, we came back. We beat UCLA at home. We ended up winning 3 of the next 5, including the Apple Cup, with really strong finish to the year. And I thought our response as collectively, as a group in the locker room, was really good to that loss. I remember we had a bye week. We kind of rallied. Remember, we rallied each other. The captains got everybody together, and we kind of found a way, And I think that's where this Washington State team is at. It's really early in the season, and that's hard to imagine. But it's early in the season. This team, the leaders, have to find a way to pull everybody else along with them. What do you think the mentality is, and how do they respond in that locker room?
It's got to be us against the world, because you know how it is. You're walking around campus, people looking at you sideways, making comments, asking questions, and thankfully we didn't grow up in the social media era, so they're dealing with this from a whole bunch of different angles, right? But this could pull a team together. This can galvanize a team. You got a tough opponent coming up. Let's not sugarcoat it. UW is a good football team with a bunch of talent. Even got a couple of guys that used to play for Washington State over there. But it's got to be you against the world, man. Just focus, go to class, come to practice, watch more film, and use this as motivation, because you were not 59-10 that much worse than a North Texas team. You just didn't take care of the little things, the details of the game, and you and I know that is so important.
Yeah, and again, you mentioned, how this team kind of looks at this game and the response. I think Jimmy Rogers is uniquely suited in this scenario, right? He is a guy that is really honest with his players. He's honest with the media. I mean, he came out and told it like it was. There's an open quarterback competition. Whether that's a good thing or not, he's being honest that position needs to play better. And I think Jackson Potter, who's been the starter, would tell you the same thing, right? You look at it on film, and there was a couple of those throws, those interceptions, they were just flat bad decisions, right? The first one, he bypasses the outcut to the wide side of the field to Josh Meredith, comes back inside and tries to throw a seam late over the middle with some pressure, right? There was other factors there. The running back, Angel Johnson, got beat, but he still missed that first read. And then the second one, he tries to force one in. And the third one, he doesn't look off the Mike linebacker. I mean, those are mistakes that he made, and he would tell you the same thing. And those led to huge interceptions that really affected that game. So I think, Coach Rogers watched the same thing and said, we need to figure out who's the guy. And it might be Jackson Potter, right? But it might be Zevi Ekas. It might be Julian Duggar. We don't know at this point. I am interested to see how the team responds to whoever that is behind center.
Yeah, it should be wide open. It should be wide open. I appreciate Jimmy for his honesty. I appreciated him just being vulnerable after the game. He said, man, this is embarrassing. Like, what's going on? He didn't give any participation trophies. He wasn't going to pat anybody on the back in that moment. And I think that is a perfect way to do it, especially in a world where you feel like everyone is giving a pat on the back at times. But this is football. Either you do or you don't. You get it done, or we'll find somebody else to do that. So it should be an open competition there when it comes to the QB spot.
Yeah, and we're going to break a little more of that QB spot down, the Jackson Potter performance, and maybe what to look for in some of those other guys when we come back on Talkin' Cougars. This segment is presented by Cougs First. Think Cougs First for products, services, and hiring.
Welcome back to Talkin' Cougars. I'm Michael Bumpus with my quarterback, Alex Brink. It is time now for our play breakdown. Unfortunately, we're talking about an interception, but you learn from these type of moments, and that's what you, Alex Brink, and everyone else are going to do in this situation here. Here is the situation. It is second and 16 on WSU's 33-yard line, a minute 54 left in the first half, and you got 4 verses going on. So we're looking at this North Texas defense. They're in like a 3-3-5 defense. 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, 5 DBs on the outside. The pre-snap look is telling our quarterback it's a too high look, maybe even cover 2. You're looking at the body language of the corners on the outside is telling you that. But North Texas knows you are dealing with a young quarterback. We are going to invert. We are going to make him believe something is there that is not there, and that's exactly what happens. You have your outside back, your nickel, whatever you want to call him, go down to the middle of the field. The safety comes down, and now he is playing the hook. The guy who's over the slot, the nickelback, is now playing as that too high safety look. So the first picture the quarterback takes, he sees too high. I identified my safeties. I'm good to go. He gets into his drop. Things have changed. The safety is rolled down. The linebacker gets deep. And now that nickel is playing the other half of the field. It's still a Tampa 2 look. It's just the guys who were there are not there anymore. So he's looking for his seam. I think Alex Brink and I will agree. He makes the right decision, but it's all about the timing of throwing that football. I think the invert and the different pitcher after the snap gave him a tough look.
There's no doubt, Bump. I mean, it's a little bit of a cloudy picture when you talk about the different inverts and look, I mean, I think the defensive coordinator for North Texas had a good plan in general and some players that played well to his scheme. But Jackson Potter knew he had this. I mean, the way he committed to this throw, I think he knew it was some version of Tampa 2, and he felt like he had that shot to Tony Freeman. Now, you mentioned it. There's kind of two ways to think about this, right? If he takes the drop he takes, that big 3-step drop out of the gun, he could work that middle linebacker, who ends up being the middle linebacker. He could work him one way or the other with his eyes and throw it away from him. In this case, he keeps his eyes locked on to the left, to the slot, and that linebacker keeps flowing, and that's where the interception happens. If he were to have used his eyes and moved him the other way, he may have had a chance at it with that timing, or he could have done exactly what he did and then snapped his eyes back to the field and he would have had Josh Meredith for a touchdown. That being said, I think if Jackson Potter knew he had this, right, and committed to it, if he just speeds up his process a little bit and throws it faster, quicker footwork, lets that thing go right as the receiver passes that hook defender, that linebacker, hits him before the hash mark, it's a completion. So again, you talk about the learning lesson. You watch this tape, he's going to look at that and be like, man, I had that, right? That's a throw he can make in his sleep. It's got to happen faster, or he's got to know what that middle linebacker is doing and manipulate him with his eyes. That's the next level. And I think in the end, that's why we're having an open competition at the Washington State quarterback position this week, is he was such a good decision maker in practice, in spring ball and fall, and it's fallen back a little bit in the first 3 weeks. And Jimmy Rogers and the offensive staff are saying, hey, we need to challenge this young man to either get back to the guy he was that made us go with him as the number one, or we need to find somebody else that can do it. For Jackson Potter, he's got to find a way to bounce back, right? Quarterbacks throw picks. That's part of the deal, right? You got to find a way to bounce back. You got to find that confidence you had, because he has talent, right? He's got a good arm talent. He can throw the football, but he's got to get back to that quality decision making and not let the game get too big for him.
Yeah, and with that open quarterback competition, man, you got to look at Zevi. Went to the same high school I went to, so I have a soft spot for this young man. But he also has experience. Went to Bryant, played a few years there. Came and played in not the Rose Bowl. I wish it was the Rose Bowl. The bowl game for your Washington State Cougars against Syracuse, and had himself a day. What he brings to the table is one experience, like I mentioned, and he's athletic. He buys himself some time, and he plays with a confidence that I think that the team can rally around. I've met the young man before, had several conversations with him. He has the demeanor and the presence of a quarterback and the experience of a guy who has played football at a high level before. I think he's athletic. I think he's the perfect type of player to give Potter the competition that he needs. And look, it's going to be a tough decision for these coaches. At least I hope it's a tough decision for these guys. I hope it goes down to the final hour or the final day where these guys are pushing each other, making plays in practice, and they put the best guy out there. But I think Zevi is the perfect candidate to push Potter in this situation.
We mentioned at the beginning, Bump, how there's no participation trophies at this level of football, right? It's all about competition. And I loved what you said. You either do or you don't in football, right? You either execute or you don't. And that sometimes is the hard thing about playing quarterback, is the ball leaves our hand last. So ultimately we are responsible. And I think, for Jackson Potter, that's part of the learning lesson. For Zevi Eckhouse, hopefully he stayed in it for the last 3 weeks. I liked his response in the North Texas game. He came in, it was like one of his first throws, ripped a ball down the sideline on time. You kind of saw what makes him good, right? The anticipation, the understanding of the playbook, right? What he doesn't have for, say, arm talent or physical abilities, he makes up for with his charisma, his confidence, and I think his ability to understand the defense and get the ball out on time. And you mentioned his legs. I think he's a good athlete, not a great athlete, but he can use his legs, and he's nifty, and he can find a way to get you out of plays. So, that's why, he's in the mix here, and it would provide a different look. You have to decide in a short amount of time as a coaching staff, right? Basically 3 real days of practice, of work, who that guy is going to be. And I think it's going to be an interesting challenge. And it's an interesting challenge for these players to mentally stay in it and keep the locker room in it and everybody to believe in them as the guy.
Yeah, and as a squad, I mean, imagine, I've been in this situation before. You were in a quarterback battle my freshman year with Swagger. And as a team, we're going to support whoever goes out there, but we're also questioning, who's going to be the guy. And then we're watching you make plays. We're watching Swags make plays. We're going back and forth. And internally, we picked our guy mentally, and especially in our little groups, and it was you. So that's another dynamic that I think people aren't really going to talk about and realize either, is that the team itself will pick the guy that they want to lead them out to the football field. My question is, will it match the coach's decision at the end of the day?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, that's one of the hard parts about quarterback competitions is there's a push-pull all over the place. And I always tell young quarterbacks that are in quarterback battles, everything matters when you're in it. It's not just the throws and completions or the touchdowns or the interceptions. It's the ball handling. It's how you stand in the huddle and deliver the play. It's your reaction, right, with the players on the sideline, how you handle your business with the coaches and implement everything. So it's the little things. And that's part of what the coaches certainly are going to be looking at this week. When we come back, we'll hear from the team and some of the things that they are saying following that loss to North Texas. This segment is brought to you by Flat Stick Pub, local craft beer, mini golf, and old school fun. Back here on Talkin' Cougars, let's hear from some of the Washington State football team as they try and move on from North Texas.
Obviously a disappointing loss. Credit to North Texas and Coach Morris. I thought they did a really good job as far as having the guys and their team ready to play, and we didn't execute in any capacity of what we're capable of or what we expect and what the players expect. And I think it's unfortunate. Obviously, it's hard to stop people, but when you give them the ball so many times over and over and over with poor decision-making or just lack of ball security, bad things will happen. I'm more interested in how we're going to respond, the attitude in which we attack the process of practice and preparing and having the right mindset to take a growth-type mindset and take steps in the right direction.
We can't completely erase what we did last week. We got to use that as a lesson still. We're still learning from that. It's not really a loss, it's a lesson. So we're moving forward from that. It's in the back of our heads, but we do got to move forward and get ready for this next game.
Yeah, I know how Apple Cup is. Same thing every year. It's a big game. We know what game it is. The important thing is, like I say every week, keeping the simple things simple. We don't want to come into this week thinking we got to do anything different. It's important to stay to our craft and prepare like we would prepare like we was playing any other team. And I think that's important going forward.
All right, Bump, glad we can move past that one. When we come back, we're going to jump into our Apple Cup preview. This segment is brought to you by Valley GMC. See you in the Valley.
Welcome back to Talkin' Cougars. Michael Bumpus with my quarterback, Alex Brink. This is weird time of the year. It's Apple Cup week, and we're not talking November. We're talking about September, and it's Apple Cup week, and we got to break down this matchup with the UW Huskies. They've been on a roll. They beat Colorado 38-21. They beat UC Davis 70-10. There's a lot to break down, a lot to talk about. Where do you want to start, B?
Well, the first place I'm going to start is that, in my opinion, this game could not come at a better time for Washington State, right? That was such a disaster down in Denton, Texas, that this is the perfect thing to focus on and move on. And so for Washington State, they got a chance to focus on this rivalry, big game, great team that they're going to play. And, I think in that sense, these guys can get excited about it. So that's number one. Number two, this is a really good Husky football team. They're better than they were last year. I think that's the thing that Cougar fans are going to kind of shake their head at because it was such a tight game last year in the Apple Cup. Washington State's going to have to find a way on both sides of the football. And what I mean is that on defense for Washington State, they're facing a very multiple offense, right? The Washington Huskies last year with Will Rogers pulling the trigger, right, is pretty one-dimensional in the sense that they ran the football well with Jonah Coleman and they would drop back play action pass. There was not a lot of stuff happening outside the pocket or off schedule. With Damon Williams, the quarterback for the Huskies this year, it's a whole different ballgame. You got design quarterback run, you got a ton of outside of the pocket passes. I saw him at Elite 11 a few years ago. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He is an elite player that can break you down with his legs. So for this Washington State defense, who I think matches up pretty well, they are going to have to fly around and make a lot of plays. I want to see if defensive coordinator Jesse Bobbitt decides to just bring some pressure. Play man coverage on the outside, put guys in the box, commit to that, and see if you can get some stops on first and second down and force some long third downs.
Yeah, offensively, you mentioned Coleman 177 and 2 touchdowns against Colorado. You got 5 touchdowns against UC Davis. They want to run the football. Offensively, they're going to pack it in. You'll see some 11, some 12 personnel, 2 tight ends. They're going to motion 1 receiver to the right, identify if it's man or a zone. They'll run the split zone. They'll run the zone lead as well. And they'll also get their quarterback outside the pocket, try to get the ball down the field and let him make the final decision if nothing is there, because Williams can run the football as well. Defensively, there's a couple ways that they can attack you. They're traditionally a 4-2-5 defense, but what I saw against UC Davis, you did as well, is that once they feel like they can dominate you inside, they're going to get into that 5-man front. They're going to cover up your center. They're going to make their nose tackle 2 gap, and their guard's going to be in that 3-tech, double 3-tech with the wide 5s, wide 6s over there on the line of scrimmage and man you up and dare you to beat them one-on-one. And I think you and I agree to this point that the strength of this offense right now has to be the wideouts. So if I'm a wideout, I'm going to expect to see a lot of man, and I have to make them get out of it. I got to win my releases at the line of scrimmage. I have to be where I'm supposed to be on time and leave spacing for my route combinations. This is going to be a battle. UW is a good football team, but as you know, this is the Apple Cup. Anything can go down.
Yeah, I saw a couple different things. You mentioned that bear front, that 5 down lineman front with kind of 1 linebacker, a lot of 1 high safety, man coverage. Colorado State in the first game ran the ball pretty effectively, right? They used the counter plays, right? The halfback tackle counter. At times they used the H-back coming out, and you saw them able to kick out those wide ends that you mentioned, right? The wide 7s, the wide 5s. And there was some success there. Washington State has not shown the ability to consistently run the football inside. And I think a reason for that, and this is what you're touching on, is they haven't consistently stretched the field sideline to sideline with their speed, right? We saw it best against San Diego State. The very first play of the game, they faked an inside run RPO, toss it out to Trey Lechner, the athletic tight end, let him spread the field. Now, he only got a couple yards, but again, it gets the defense running, right? And I think Josh Meredith at the receiver position, Tony Freeman at the slot position, and Trey Lechner, 3 guys that have been playing FBS football for a long time and are veterans for Washington State and of the Apple Cup. I think those guys need to play a big role in this offense. I think whoever's playing quarterback, you got to let these guys off the leash and let that thing fly a little bit, and then add in that young freshman we saw last week, Carter Paps, man, number 21, looks like River Craycraft 2.0. Let that man eat too. I think you need to throw the football to beat the Washington Huskies. You got to get away from the run on first down and throw it on first down. Yeah,
2-1's kind of fast too, man. I was watching him on film. He can move a little bit. Yeah, and I'm with you too, man. I think you have to throw to win the football. I mean, the football game, obviously you have to run the rock as well. I like the approach that they had with San Diego State, using their offensive linemen pulling to influence linebackers in that second level, but actually throwing off of that. I saw UC Davis sprinkle some of that in there as well. And they had some explosives. And UC Davis had some guys open. Quarterback play was not the greatest, and the DBs were able to close the space in the gap when it comes to at the top of their routes. But there are plays to be had. And they got to come to the Palouse, man. And anything can happen in the Palouse. So I'm looking forward to this battle, man. I'm looking forward to see what the mental of this team is going up against a formidable Big Ten opponent that has been tested, but not as tested as you would, I would assume, want, if you are a UW fan, your team to be going into the Apple Cup.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. I actually think, for Washington State, not that you ever want to be in this situation, but you got nothing to lose, right? You just got blown out the week before, right? The week before that, you actually you looked okay against a solid San Diego State team. So you really don't know what your identity is. For Washington, they're a talented football team, but they really have not significantly been tested. And going on the road is hard. Playing, as we know, a full Giesa Field, packed Martin Stadium, that's hard. And so that's going to be a challenge in its own right. There's one more phase, right, Bump, in a 3-phase game that we have to talk about, and that's special teams. Washington State's special teams, particularly the punt unit, has really struggled. And there is no chance they're going to win this football game if they're not clean in the special teams game. Kicker's been fantastic, right? Loved him. But that punt unit has got to clean up. You can't have miscues there.
Yeah, the little things. I covered the Seahawks this weekend, and there was a young returner for the Steelers who forgot that a kickoff is a live ball. It can get into the end zone, and that thing is live, so the Seahawks got a cheap touchdown there. Just the little things. Cross your T's and dot your I's and make sure you are ready to go. All right, when we return, man, we'll get an interview from Dave Mahler. That is next here on Talkin' Cougars.
All right, back here on Talkin' Cougars. We're going behind enemy lines. Super excited to be joined by Dave Softy Mahler of Sports Radio KJR up in Seattle. Softy, thanks for coming on, man. This is a weird game in a way. You know, we're back in September for year 2 for the Apple Cup. You know that I am somebody that believes in that November Apple Cup, the history of it, and here we are in September for year 2. What does this feel like, kind of from the UW end and the outside looking in at the rivalry?
Well, first of all, I'm doubting that you're super excited really to have me on this show. So I appreciate, the little white lie there just for appearances to get through the next 10 minutes, man. Just suck it up and let's make this thing happen and get this putz off our program. So I totally understand where I'm at and what I'm dealing with. But it's great to see you, man. Appreciate you having me on. And yeah, I mean, look, man, I'm totally with you. I'm 52 years old. I've been around this thing a long time. And I think from the standpoint of collateral damage with UW moving to the Big Ten, this is one of the negatives, to that move is having this game in September. This game should be played in November, the Saturday or Friday after Thanksgiving, and anything else just feels completely wrong and foreign. It feels wrong to us, but the next generation, the 5 and 6 year olds out there now that will grow up hopefully with this series being played every year and knowing nothing else besides this game, Alex, being played in September. Maybe for them down the road, this will be something that they'll know no different. But for guys like us, for OGs like you and me that have been around this thing a long time, I think from that standpoint, it's terrible. It stinks having this game in September. I hate it.
Yeah, and even from the Washington State perspective, right, there's a lot of layers to this, right? You're coming off a really tough loss down at North Texas, licking your wounds. You got a brand new coach in Jimmy Rogers, 75 new players on the roster. I'm thankful this game's being played in Pullman because I think the energy, right, will help this team really understand what this rivalry is all about. But that's kind of one of those challenges too, I'm sure.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that was a problem for UW last year when Jed Fish was in year 1 at UW and really did not understand maybe how big a rivalry this really is. And I think the bad news for Wazoo, Alex, honestly, not trying to be cocky, from our perspective, but I think he gets it now. I mean, I have been saying this all week long on my show in Seattle. I've sensed it on the air. I've sensed it off the air with players, coaches, that Jed Fish is not just looking for a win this weekend. He wants a lot more than that. This is a guy that was throwing the ball up 53 points against UC Davis in the fourth quarter of their game a couple weeks ago. If he's willing to do that to UC Davis, what is he willing to try and do to a team that ripped his heart out, embarrassed him, and quite frankly made him look bad with that play call, with Will Rogers to the boundary, losing a game they probably should have won, to be honest with you, last year against the Cougars in Seattle. So I think Jed Fish is looking for blood in this game on Saturday. And from a Cougar perspective, honestly, man, I'm worried that he might get it this weekend.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this UW Husky team because, there's some question marks through 2 games and a bye week where you don't exactly know who they are. They're talented, right? Like talented roster, has some great additions, but, a Colorado State team they beat up on, you mentioned UC Davis. From what you see of this team and some of the changes maybe in the offseason, coordinator change, what do you like about this team versus this team last year?
Yeah, well, their offensive line is way better than it was a year ago at this time. I mean, their offensive line at this time a year ago was an absolute train wreck. It was a complete tragedy. I remember watching the Weber State game in the opener, and I swear to God, Alex, they had Drew Party on one play playing right tackle and the next play playing left tackle. Not different drives, but the same drive and different plays. And I've never seen that before covering college football in my life. There's only 2 guys back from that offensive line a year ago that are playing, and that's Landon Hatchett at center, who was a guard a year ago, and as a party at right tackle. Everybody else is brand new, including the pure freshman. He's 18 years old, John Mills, playing left guard for Washington. He's a future left tackle, by the way. He's a star in the making at left guard, but this offensive line looks way better, light years than it did a year ago at this point. So that's number 1. Number 2, the secondary, and we'll see if Takario Davis ends up playing on Saturday in the Apple Cup. He may not play. Had an injury on a pick 2 weeks ago against UC Davis, and he may have to be out. But the secondary features maybe their best corner tandem since 2016 when they had that great defense with Jimmy Lake and Pete Kwiatkowski. But again, Takario may sit this one out on Saturday. But the biggest The biggest difference by far is the offensive line. They couldn't even function offensively in games they had a year ago, and they can now. Can they compete in the Big Ten? Can they run with the big boys like Ohio State and Illinois when they come to Seattle? We're going to find out, but it should be plenty to handle you guys on Saturday, man, no doubt.
And there's well, we'll see about that. Settle down now. But we also got to talk about the quarterback play, right? Damon Williams. Yeah. I mean, a different type of player than Will Rogers, adds a little bit of a different dimension. I knew him back in high school. Really thought he was a special player, a good get for Jed Fish. What are you seeing from Damon?
Well, he's 19, but he plays and acts like he's 25 years old. I mean, he is really amazing the way the kid carries himself. And you're right. I mean, he's a completely different player than Will Rogers. I mean, not that Will Rogers was a potted plant and couldn't pick up 3 or 4 yards if he had to, but this guy, you can run an offense around Damon Williams' legs. You could not do that last year around Will Rogers. I think the unfair part, though, Alex, about Damon is that he gets pigeonholed sometimes as just a running quarterback, which is ridiculous. I mean, go back and watch the Sun Bowl against Louisville, and the accuracy downfield was insane. I mean, the guy's completion percentage is off the charts. His yards per attempt is off the charts. It's not just a dink and dunk offense with this guy. They are throwing the ball down the field. The problem right now with the passing game, and the reason why, if I'm a Cougar fan, I'm looking to stop the run first and foremost on Saturday, is because they don't have a lot of depth right now at wide receiver. Denzel Boston is really your only reliable target you've got. Rasheed Williams, who was your number 2 guy, is now banged up. Amari Evans, who's the transfer from Penn State, hasn't played yet this year. I think he's going to play in the Apple Cup on Saturday, but this is a guy who did not put up gigantic numbers at Penn State. You all know what Penn State's offense is all about. It's not about throwing the ball, 50 yards downfield. So there's not a lot of experience right now at wide receiver. So if I'm anybody, let alone the Cougars on Saturday, I'm looking to stop number 1 and make these guys throw the ball.
Yeah, number 1, Jonah Coleman. That's a handful in and of itself, like you mentioned with the upgraded O-line, and we know about Coleman and the rest of that running game. When I look at the defense, you mentioned Takario Davis. On tape, it looks like they want to challenge you, play man coverage, kind of beat you up at the line of scrimmage. Do you think that changes at all with Davis out, or is that just a philosophical with how they want to play?
Yeah, I think they want to play like that all the time. They've got 2 big corners, and again, if Davis doesn't play, I don't think their philosophy will change much. Their linebackers are a lot better, I think, right now than they were a year ago. They do miss Carson Bruner, but they got Buda, Tariq, the transfer, as you know, from Washington State. They're waiting on Jacob Manu, who's probably not going to play at least until the second half of the year. He's coming off a knee injury at Arizona last year and has not been able to get on the field yet for UW. But, the pass rush, man, has been really suspect for these guys. I think it's the one area of concern that I really would feel nervous about if I were a big-time Husky fan, that they just don't have anybody that can consistently get after the quarterback. We thought it was going to be Zach Durfee, the transfer from Dakota, whose first game, by the way, was against Texas in the Sugar Bowl a couple years ago after having to sit out because of these stupid, archaic NCAA rules, which they just changed like 2 months ago, screwing him over in the process, by the way. But he hasn't proven much. He has not been able to be consistent off the edge. So UW is still looking for, Alex, a real consistent threat getting after the quarterback on the defensive front. The back 7 is the strength. The front 7 right now, if you include the defensive line, a little bit of a weakness right now, I think, for UW's defense. So I don't know about you, man. I'm not sure what Jimmy's thinking about doing at quarterback, but you want to take advantage of that. You may want to play the runner, the kid, Duggar, and just say sandlot football, go run the ball and see what happens. That might be your best chance in this game on Saturday, man, honestly.
Yeah, Cougs got some question marks. Bump and I talked about. There's no doubt. Either way, that this game, there's going to be fireworks. There's going to be something, right? And it's in Pullman. I love that. I'm going to see you over there, which is super cool, man. You're right. I didn't want to have you on, but it was good anyway. I love it, man. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, guess what? I don't want to talk to you either. This was a favor for your producer. So let's just be honest about the way we feel about each other. Hey, go Dogs, and we'll see you Saturday.
Go Cougs. We'll be back on Talking Cougars. Back now on Talking Cougars. Always entertaining, Bump, to hear from Softy, to say the least. And, getting a preview of that Washington team, I think, is important from the behind the enemy lines. Now, I want to take a little walk down memory lane. And I don't know if I've ever asked you this, but I know how I approached the Apple Cup and the rivalry and the competition. Growing up in Eugene, right? I saw Oregon State, the Civil War. I kind of knew what that was. What was your take and your preparation as you went into maybe your first Apple Cup, or even as your career went on and the rest of the Apple Cups you participated in?
Well, the first one, I didn't know what we were getting into. Obviously, I'm from California. I knew about the rivalry. Had one in high school, but you never really know until you're in it. And I believe at the time we had lost like 6 or 7 in a row or something crazy like that. And the Huskies had to come to the Palouse. And I remember the intensity of a Will Durden, a Scotty Davis, the guys on our defense, Hamza Abdullah, guys who have been in these battles before, played on successful Coug teams, but weren't able to get over the hump when it comes to beating UW. And the game was a blur. I remember making a few plays, catching a few footballs, but when it all sunk in was when the game was over and we win and the students rushed the field. And the smell of good old Pullman water was everywhere. And they're lifting up Scott Durning on his shoulders. They're carrying him off the field. He has a club on his hand. He's not supposed to be playing in that game. And I thought to myself, okay, I understand it and I get it now. And every single year that we played this game, it intensified. Ended up winning 3 of those things. As you know, we are the winningest class in WSU history when it comes to the Apple Cup. Let's go. But every year it got more intense and it became more and more important, because there's nothing like coming on the west side of the state, looking at the Space Needle and seeing your flag up there, because you own the state for a few years. So for a whole year, this year, I've been able to talk that talk and walk around and say whatever I need to say. And I'm hoping I can do it again. You being an Oregon guy, watching Oregon and Oregon State go at it, and obviously watching UW and Washington State go at it as well. What was it like for you? Because you're a quarterback, man. It's a different thing. You're the winningest quarterback in WSU history when it comes to the Apple Cup.
Well, Bump, and again, I'm on the outside looking in. I'm not a coach, obviously. We're not coaches. But I always felt, certainly as a player, like this game was a little more important than other games. And it's not that I treated the other games as less important. It's just, you remember how Bill Doba, our head coach, and our coaching staff, a number of them who were Washington State Cougars, like Mike Levenseller, offensive coordinator, receiver coach, Tim Rosenbach, Kenny Green, right? Like, these guys lived it also. And so, we felt that, right? Guys would come back, they'd bring alums back to talk. We'd have letters and different things posted throughout the locker room when it was Apple Cup week. Like, it was a thing. And I think it helped us prepare. Honestly, Bump. I really did. I remember, like you, that my redshirt freshman year, true freshman year in 2004, when we lost 6 straight, that senior class was so successful, right? They'd done so many great things, but they'd never beaten the Dogs. And when we beat the Dogs, and I saw the look on those seniors' face and how happy they were, it was a tough season, but we finished there. Like you said, everybody rushed the field. Man, what a special moment. And then just moving forward, it was like, when we had those opportunities to play in Husky Stadium, I wanted nothing more than to beat the Dogs on that field. And thinking about 2006, the one that just got away, man, a tight one we could have won. I mean, I think the intensity is important. I think the athletes need to feel that. Most of these guys, when they walk on that field and see a sold-out stadium, have never experienced anything like that in their careers. 70 new players, a lot of them coming from smaller schools or different setups. How many of them have actually seen a full stadium in a rivalry with this level of intensity? I would argue less than 5% of the guys on that roster. You got to ride that wave of emotion, because you know how it is. The chills you get walking out, hearing that da-na-na, seeing that student section going crazy. There is nothing like it. And I want to see this Washington State football team respond.
Yeah, there is nothing like it. And hopefully, well, we know there are a few guys who are going to be on this roster who could prepare these guys mentally and physically. You never really know until you step on the football field, until you walk out that tunnel. But it's important that you have guys who have been in these games and understand the tradition and how important it is to perform at a high level and just give it everything that you have. I mean, we've been in games that we're not supposed to win that we've won, and we've lost games that we're supposed to win. This is the Apple Cup. This is the rivalry. We played in the 100th Apple Cup, the 100th one. So the tradition is deep. It's going to be a fun weekend. And Cougs, let's go get her done.
Let's go get it done. When we come back, Bump, we'll get it done with our score predictions for this version of the Apple Cup. All right, Bump, we are back. The Apple Cup is upon us. It is September, but it is just as important for this Washington State football team. I gotta ask you, man, what is your favorite Apple Cup memory in the 3 wins that you had that you got to experience?
Well, first, let me say that every day I go to work, I cross the 520 bridge here in Seattle, and I look at Husky Stadium, and I tell Husky Stadium, I am undefeated over there, sir. So put some respect on my name. So I appreciate that. But my favorite moment, man, it's got to be our final drive together. We were moving. It's like a minute and 20-something left, maybe one timeout left in the game. And we connected a couple times, you know. That was my job, was to keep the chains moving in that offense. There were a couple times you're rolling to the right side, throwing across your body. We had to do a scramble drill. I sit down and you hit me. You find B. Gibb, one of the greatest WSU receivers of all time, in the end zone to win the ball game. That last drive was special, man. I knew it was the last time I was gonna play with my dogs out there, and we were able to be victorious. So tomorrow morning, when I wake up and drive across the 520 bridge, I will once again look at Husky Stadium and say, I am undefeated in your house, sir. What about yours?
Yeah, it's hard to beat that. I had some fun ones for sure, but that last drive, like you said, I was just telling somebody this week, they were asking about kind of that whole thing, and they were obviously talking about the throw to Brandon, which everybody talks about and sees, and was such a fun play. But nothing encapsulates you and I's relationship like that 3rd and 4 that we had with the game on the line. Like you said, I get flushed out of the pocket. I got nothing, Coug fans. I had nothing. There was nothing open. The game would have been over in that moment, okay? Instead, guess who shows up? Number 5, Michael Bumpus, does what he does best, finds that open zone, and I was able to locate him, my guy. I tell you, I think about that moment all the time because that was such an important play. It doesn't get talked about enough, and then we followed it up. Jump on the ball, you run a little seam route, slide through there, and make a tough catch in traffic. Again, a hallmark of Michael Bumpus. What a special, special moment. A great way to end our careers and send the seniors and that coaching staff out for sure, man. It was fun.
Yeah, man, that was awesome. Thinking about it every year. So hopefully these guys make memories of their own and continue a great tradition. So now it's about game predictions. Vegas got us as 20-point underdogs. You know I ain't going with no 20-point underdog, man. I'm going Cougs get her done in a tight one, 21-20 at the house. What do you say?
Ooh, tight one. I think it's going to be low scoring. If Washington State wants to win this football game, defense has to show up big. I think the Cougs win 20-14, have a few field goals in there, and I think Washington State walks away with a big win at home in Pullman on the Palouse.
All right, well, let's hope the next time you and I link up, we are celebrating. I will be listening to you on the call, watching the game. This weekend, on Saturday, I will be in California at the CW Network's headquarters. We'll be breaking down games there. On Sunday, I will be hosting the pre-halftime and post-game show for the Seattle Seahawks as they take on the Saints. And then during the week, you know where to find me on Seattle Sports 710 from 10 to 2 p.m. every single day. Michael Bumpus 5 on all social media platforms. Holla at your boy.
You can find me on X at AlexBrink10. I'll be on the call again with Chris King and Jessamine McIntyre on the sideline, fired up to be up in the booth to call this one. That's a wrap on episode 4. Happy Apple Cup week. Go Cougs.